Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your Hurricane Outlook and discussion. Monday, October 7th, 2019. I want to show you something real quick here. This is the Super Typhoon Category 5 equivalent, Super Typhoon Hagibis over here in the Western Pacific. And these are the Mariana Islands through here. And you have Guam down here to the south. And we can see that here real quick on the Google Maps here. I pulled it up. The little island that it goes over is right there. And you can see there's Guam down there. And we do have radar in Guam, but the center is too far away to really get a good picture of. So we look at this satellite animation here. This is from the folks at weathernerds.org. And look at that little island right there. The eye and the core, etc., went right over it. Wow. Must have been amazing in a very bad way. So there you go, Super Typhoon passing through the Marianas. This will eventually head up towards Japan. We will track that and see what happens over the next few days. Looks like the track could be pretty close. A curve up here close to Tokyo. You know, it could be a little bit more to the west. It could be more to the east. You know how these things go. But we have a few days now that we can watch this and see how this unfolds. Believe it or not, that typhoon curving into the westerlies will have a big impact on the weather for a good deal of the rest of the world, and I'll explain that later on. When you take all that heat and energy out of the tropics and inject it into the westerlies and the mid-latitude storm tracks, wild things can happen. All right, so the MJO still in phase 1 right now, favoring the Western Hemisphere and Africa. Supposedly it's going to weaken through phase 2, which even more so favors the Western Hemisphere. Even though it gets a little bit weaker here, still a pretty good presence. And that leads me to believe we will still have a very active time of it, considering it's October. I mean, we're already 7 days into October, and I think we're going to get 2 to 3 named storms before the month is said and done. And bolstering that argument, look, we have X's and 2 yellows, 1 orange. A disturbance down here in the Florida Straits. It's a trough of low pressure, very low chance of development, but it is bringing some showers and thunderstorms. And a little bit of a circulation down there in the Florida Straits. We can see another area, a broader non-tropical low pressure area, and this one is going to be the one to really watch because I think it's going to do the most to create problems along the coast here over the next few days. And then we have this other area out between the Azores and Bermuda. So a lot of activity up here in the subtropics coming together, feeding in some energy here from the deep tropics there in the Florida Straits. The bottom line is it's going to be a pretty active time of it coming up. The only thing on the maps right now is the Super Typhoon Hagibis out here in the Western Pacific, but I think it won't be too long that we will see a couple of areas of invest pop up in the Atlantic Basin as things begin to get busier there. So looking at the satellite animation today, this one courtesy of Tropical Tidbits, you can not see it too well here, but there is a little trough of low pressure, weak circulation center in the Florida Straits, energy trying to come together here, some more energy with this non-tropical area here, and lots of energy, right? Another tropical wave and energy moving off the coast of Africa. A little bit of rain shower activity moving now through parts of the islands. A little bit of tropical wave action, but the wind is too strong on the upper levels for this to coalesce and develop into anything. And another way to look at this, I show this often, we have the cloud cover here, then you sort of peel away the clouds, look beneath them and see what the vorticity shows. And this is trying to focus a little bit more. It's still rather stretched out. This is all stretched out, but trying to focus here. And I love this because we can track this over time and watch and see how things evolve. This is another frontal boundary that's coming through, and we're going to get high pressure out over the Atlantic, and just quite the setup for a strong coastal storm that'll remain just offshore, and I'll show you that in the modeling here in just a moment. And over the next few days, let me highlight this in white so it shows up better, I will be watching very closely the Southwest Caribbean, as most of the model guidance is indicating that something is going to try to develop down there. How strong it is, where it goes, etc., that remains to be seen. But there is a lot of energy down here. You can see the intertropical convergence zone. I think a piece is going to peel off of South America and get pulled into this gyre that's going to set up down here, and something's going to try to develop, and we will be able to track that, of course, using these amazing tools that we have at our disposal. So looking at the global models here, we'll take a look at the GFS, the Global Forecast System, and the European today. This is the GFS off the Tropical Tidbits site, and we'll use the little slider, the scroll feature here today. This is the initial conditions right here, and you can clearly see how all this energy, let's go back to using blue, all this energy here spread out over a large area, hasn't focused yet. A little bit of energy down here, this tropical wave kind of weak, moving through the islands. Okay, so let's move this out in time over the next few days. There's 24 hours. Let's just use this. Actually, I use the arrow keys on the keyboard. 48 hours there, and you see what begins to happen. This is 5,000 feet in the atmosphere, or what we call 850 millibars, and storminess trying to develop off the Carolina coast, that non-tropical low sitting out here. This may become subtropical enough in its structure to warrant a name. If it does, it'll become, the name would be Melissa. We'll just have to see about that. And again, that's just the structural scientific way of looking at it. Let's just move out to 72 hours, if this will let me. And you'll see how this evolves over time. There is some energy and some wind in there, trying to focus, but it's pretty broad. So that subtropical nature, meaning that the wind and the energy is spread out over a larger area. The pressure gradient is much wider. It's not a tight focused system like that super typhoon is in the West Pacific. Then over to the west, speaking of west, this large area of cyclonic turning, this storm system, low pressure area sitting in here, pretty stiff north to northeast winds along the coast from the northeast down to the mid-Atlantic, and we'll look at this from a different perspective in just a moment. Also notice even here by day 3, 72 hours out, this starts to get a little bit more energized. So we should start to see some cloud cover, a buildup of convection by about day 3. This is Thursday, the 1-year anniversary of Hurricane Michael. I'll talk about that at the end here. And we'll watch this real close because I think something's going to try to pop down there. I'm just not sure how strong or where it ends up. Moving on along to day 4, 96 hours out. Now that is an incredible fetch of wind all the way across, probably 1,500 miles or so of ocean, aimed right at the mid-Atlantic here, northeast coast. And I'll show you this on the Euro in a minute on a broader perspective. And this is going to create problems. High waves, beach erosion, rough surf. The full moon is coming up, so the high tides probably going to see some overwash in some of the more sensitive areas of our dune systems from New England all the way down to portions of the Carolinas. So I'll focus on that more as we go out in time and look at some of the local products, just making sure you're aware. Temperatures out here are still fairly nice. Water temperatures not too bad. So there are still people wanting to go out into the ocean, to the beach, in their boats, etc. And you don't want to be caught unawares of what might be developing. And that's a big influence. Look at that. Again, all that energy over the ocean really going to churn things up. And we got to pay attention to these things. Just because they are not Cat 5 hurricanes or typhoons doesn't mean they are not important. This will definitely be a problem for portions of the U.S. coast, and even Bermuda, tucked away right in here. Going to be kind of stormy, breezy, rainy from time to time in Bermuda as well. So that's day 4. Here we go out to day 5, and this is where we'll stop right now. This takes pretty good shape there. Maybe that becomes more subtropical. We'll see. It's got some frontal characteristics to it, though. Very, very broad. One of those hybrid systems, but the bottom line is it's going to be quite the wave builder for sure. And then right here, 120 hours, you see that right there, down in the Caribbean, this is trying to focus, okay? So we'll wait and see. No reason to go looking out at this point, day 6, day 7, day 8. You can do that. You know how to do that. just make sure you understand that's far out in time. A lot can change, but within this 5-day window now is what I'm going to focus on, because I believe that there's a decent chance, I would say 40% chance at this point, in my opinion, that a tropical system will develop down here in the Southwest Caribbean, and it fits the pattern, it fits the time of year, so forth and so on. So looking at this all from the perspective of the Euro, and this is the entire North Atlantic Basin, there's the west coast of Africa, eastern parts of North America right up here. So big sprawling area of high pressure at our initial map, and these go out in 24-hour increments. So here's 24 hours out. There's that low pressure area, comes together pretty quick. Kind of got a little tail on it there, a little comma shape to it, but it just might squeak by becoming classified as a subtropical storm. We'll see about that. So that's 24 hours, there's 48, and finally 72, and the Euro really painting an ugly picture up here for Long Island Sound, southeast New England, Connecticut there on the north side of the Sound, down through the Jersey coast, into the Tidewater, maybe the Outer Banks. Strong high pressure to the north. Put an H in there for high pressure, low pressure here. The squeeze play between, yep, that's going to raise a ruckus, as they say. So we'll call this Ocean Storm Ruckus, all right? Unofficial title. It will be quite an event, I think, for the coastal areas, so please take that seriously if you have interest here. And weather.gov, if you're interested in this, go to your local weather forecast office site through weather.gov, weather.gov, put in your zip code, and read some of those statements and discussions. And I will be focusing on this more as it comes into clearer picture, a clearer focus as to what's coming. This system, not much to worry about, again, just kind of out there. But the combined energy, though, really going to create a rough Atlantic. And also the Euro here, this is day 3, there's day 4. Boy, that storm system's still hanging out right there in the northwest Atlantic. And then at day 5, same kind of thing, still hanging out as a powerful storm, taking shape over the upper Midwest. Snow, cold, blizzard conditions possible, but sort of this hybrid system down here. And then there is the signature of that cyclonic, that Central American gyre, that large turning and energy trying to focus down there. The GFS most aggressive, the Euro here not quite as much, but we'll see. And then another piece of energy. This is why I showed you the whole Atlantic here, North Atlantic anyway, trying to come off Africa, and this may develop and then kind of turn off. Rather unusual to see anything developing that far east this time of year. So definitely a busy week ahead between tracking what's happening in the Westpac to this system and pair of systems in the Atlantic. All right, as we remember, Hurricane Michael, Cat 5, very important meteorological event in my career as well, and of course for the people that this impacted, all the way down here in the Caribbean, up through the Florida Panhandle, and then along the entire path inland, leaving quite the legacy of some deaths, unfortunately, lots of destruction, of course, billions and billions in damage, and one of only a few Category 5 hurricanes to hit the U.S. We, of course, had instrumentation and cameras up for it. You know all about that by now, I am sure. I am focusing on this more from the how have things progressed in the year since the landfall. So this is what it looked like a year ago this afternoon. From the map perspective, they did a really good job there, off only by an hour or so for landfall, time-wise, and looking like Mexico Beach. Not bad for several days out for track. The intensity was off a little bit by about 60 miles per hour. They were forecasting 100 miles per hour at landfall, and of course it was at 160. We have a long way to go to understand intensity forecasting. I am going to be back in that area. I'm leaving for Florida tomorrow, and I'm going to go down to Mexico Beach. I'm going to meet with some people, and on Thursday evening they're going to have a special commemoration and remembrance at a place called, I think it's called Mango Marley's. Call it Mangoes for short, from 5 to 7. If you live down there, you know all about this. And then at 7:30, over at the Rustic Grill. I think that's what it's called. They have the Rustic Campground. Well, there's a grill there, and at 7:30, I'm going to be working with the owner, Steve, and Kim has helped to set this up down there. She has a house over on 15th, and we're going to show the Michael chapter segment, whatever you want to call it, from my 2018 documentary. I'm going to bring the actual GoPro case that we used. I want to answer questions. I'm going to talk to people, but we're going to show it. We're going to talk about it, and it's not, oh, let's relive it again. It's more of a, this is what we went through, all of us together, me as a scientist, them, those folks as residents who still live with it. And I still live with it in a different way. I'm still looking at that data even today. And yes, we use video as data. So it's going to be very cathartic, as they say. And if you don't know what that means, look it up. Cathartic. It's a coming together and an understanding of what happened and making sense of it. And, there's a lot to still be done down there. People still dealing with insurance issues, so forth and so on. That will go on for years. I look at it from a different perspective as a geographer. I want to see how things progress over time. I still do that even on the coast of Mississippi and in parts of Florida after the '04 season. We all know about this if we live where hurricanes frequent. You know how it is, and it's important. We don't remember it in a celebratory fashion. It's much like the 9/11 up in New York and D.C. and Pennsylvania. It's not a celebration. It's a remembrance for a reason, and we each bring our own reasons into that. So I'll be going back, and I'm going to be meeting with a lot of different people. I'll post some reports on Twitter, but also a lot on Patreon as well. Some exclusive content for our patrons, but also some stuff on Twitter. I'm not trying to be exclusionary or whatever by leaving people out. I will do stuff exclusive on Patreon, but also on Twitter, of course. And speaking of Patreon, I want to show you something. This was sent to me from this guy in the UK, William Woodgate. He went down and took some video. This is just showing you the power of what we're doing with Patreon. This is back on October 4th, Storm Lorenzo. I stitched together some of his video. He's on the southwest side of the UK there. And, it wasn't that dramatic. Of course not. In fact, the impacts for Ireland and the UK were not bad at all compared to what we were thinking they could be. But this is what we do and can do with our Patreon supporters. William is one of our patrons, and look, he shot some good, steady video with his GoPro there. These are, impacts. Not that big a deal, of course not. But the fact that I was able to get this video from him, and he's also one of our supporters, this is what I'm trying to build, this sort of global network of people that have an interest in the weather. And it could be cyclones, ex-hurricanes, whatever, typhoons, winter storms. We've got supporters up in Newfoundland, all over the U.S., in Great Britain, Ireland, and around the world. And this is what we can do. I think it's incredible. I wanted to show you this. Great work by this gentleman over in the UK. Hey, I am all for steady 16:9 widescreen video, and he nailed it. So really, really good job. I appreciate that, William. Excellent work. And that's what we can do. It's not just the funding, the crowdfunding part of crowdfunding. It's the crowdsourcing of stuff, content, and we're building that together. One of the awesome things that I love about Patreon, and William is one of our patrons, so if you want to get involved, that's how you do it, patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. William, thanks for sending me that. It's an honor to be able to show that to the folks that saw the update today. So a lot to keep up with. I will be traveling. Of course, I'll take the laptop with me, and I'll be doing updates along the way as we go through October here, 1 week behind us already, after today anyway, and a lot more to go. Hey, 2/3 of the month still ahead of us, and I think it's going to be rather busy. All right? Well, that is it from me for today. As always, I appreciate you tuning in from wherever and whatever device you happen to be doing so from. It's always fantastic to know that you are there on the other side. Thank you. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll be with you throughout the rest of the week.